It's a bit of a conundrum, this car, the Peugeot 508, because it was quite a well-regarded car when it came out back in 2010, and yet it was outsold by its rivals, the Ford Mondeo by 3 times over and the Volkswagen Passat 6 times over. But why, is the question. It was seen to sort of move the game on from that poor period of time that Peugeot had back in the 2000s. This car, it came along and it was a whole class above those previous Peugeots, and yet it didn't sell. Now, is that because Peugeot had done the damage by that point and nobody was willing to give them a second chance? Or is it some other reason? I don't know, badge snobbery, something like that. So the question is it rare because it's rubbish, or is it rare because people don't know what they want, and what they actually want instead of a Mondeo or a Passat is a Peugeot 508? So to understand this car, the Peugeot 508, which is a saloon car built from 2010 up until 2018, it helps to look at their advertising at the time, and it is quite clear that they were aiming this car at businessmen. It was like the executive car. The advert at the time was this chaotic businessman's day, like a French businessman living his life, drinking an absolute metric ton of coffee and having a chaotic, stressful day, and then getting in this car at the end of the day and just relaxing into the seat and just cruising along in it. And I think that means that they were aiming this car higher up the pecking order of like perceived quality and cost, putting it firmly against, you know, the German cars of the time. So you're talking minimum Volkswagen Passat, but also cars like the BMW 5 Series even, because that's the size of this car. This car is 4.7 metres long. It's no small thing. It's a very big, spacious car. The initial impressions of this car is that it is quite business-like. It's not got that sort of crazy French flair that you might expect from some Peugeots and Citroens and Renaults. It's a lot more sort of sensible, almost VW-esque in its sensibleness, although with a little few quirks here and there. It's got what feels like quite a quality interior, actually. There's nothing really in here that stands out to me as being low rent. The materials are nice, the dashboard is solidly built. Now, this car I'm in today has done 130,000 miles and there's no creaks or rattles. Cruising along, and it's, you know, a very quiet place to be sat in, and I think it's quite a nice looking car. It's understated. It's not like blowing you away with its incredibly jaw-dropping looks. It's more just like a nice, neat design. And it's not like the modern day Peugeots, which are like really trying their best, aren't they, to like be in your face and look kind of crazy looking. If you're looking for a 508 and you've got the cash to splash, you want this GT model. It's the 2.2 litre diesel, because back then diesel was the one, wasn't it? That was the high spec car, not the petrol. That was for the lowly peasants. And it's got uprated front suspension as well. So thank you very much to David for lending me this car, because this is the one to review, I think. It's a comfortable car. The seats are comfortable, they're very adjustable, and the steering column is adjustable in and out and up and down manually. The seat has a lot of travel up and down. You can sit really low in this car, or you can sit quite high up. The steering wheel is slightly off to the right from the centre of my chest by maybe like half a centimetre or something, so the seat mustn't be fully aligned up with the steering wheel. And then once you've set that position, you do have quite an array of dials and things in front of you. Now, this car has an oil temperature gauge, which apparently is a bit of a Peugeot thing. They like to tell you that. If you are the sort of person who likes putting your foot down in a car, it's useful to know that the oil's up to temperature, because that always lags behind the water temperature. Got this little screen in the middle which gives you all the sort of information that you need to know about MPG and miles to go, and that's adjustable on the steering wheel, which is absolutely full of buttons. I've got buttons for the radio, I've got buttons to control that screen in the middle, I've got telephone buttons, cruise control and speed limiter, all on the steering wheel. You do have this sort of sat-nav screen in the middle, which also is your radio, and you know, the sat-nav's a bit dated now, obviously. I wouldn't buy one of these cars because it has sat-nav. It's all controllable through the little scrolly wheel, a bit like the way the Germans did it in that era as well. It's the sophisticated way to control a screen. It's just not quite got the same software or level of processor power. So with this being the GT car, it has an automatic gearbox. You can't get it with a manual, and the automatic gearbox is an old school torque converter style gearbox. Now, initially that might sound old-fashioned and out of date, but personally for me, I'm a big fan of that kind of gearbox, because they're smooth, they're refined, they are very good for cars that you want to just cruise along in. And other German cars might have dual clutch or other fancy sort of modern gearboxes. Torque converter gearboxes can be a little bit worse on fuel economy. Oh, come on, go. Yeah, all right, it's a little bit dim-witted, but when you put your foot down, you're pulling away from a junction, it doesn't always go when you want it to, but then it kicks down the gear and away you go. Something you might expect from a Peugeot is for it to have a pillowy soft ride, and of course Peugeots of the past did have that. Now this is not quite like that, it's a little bit more modern, and of course that means that it's got a firmer edge, and of course this is the GT model, so again there's an additional factor of big wheels, different front suspension. But it still rides okay, it's absolutely fine for me, I'm happy with it. It's not battering me about. Yes, it's a little bit fidgety. The real true party piece of the 508 was the equipment levels that it had as standard, and of course also what you could spec on it, because it was really good. The Germans could learn a few things from this car. So the basic trim, no matter what 508 you buy, it's going to have at least 17-inch alloy wheels, tinted rear windows, automatic lights and wipers, cruise control and electric folding and heated door mirrors, adjustable front seats, rear parking sensors, electric windows all round, dual zone climate control. Then you get this 7-inch touchscreen with sat-nav, Bluetooth, USB connectivity and DAB radio. Then of course you could go for the levels above, like the Allure, which will then add things like electrically adjustable heated seats. You've got front parking sensors, reversing camera and blind spot assistance and keyless entry. And then you've got the GT model, which right now as we speak is massaging me with these seats. And it's been doing it for a while, and it's funny because it goes through these different phases. I've got the auto dip beam headlights. The full beam changes depending on detecting cars and stuff, so it doesn't blind them. Now that's because this car's got the adaptive xenon headlights, which do the cornering thing as well. It's also got a preheater, which means that you can preheat this car before you even get in it. Now you have to set that up on a timer. If you want your car to be nice and toasty warm at 7 AM in the morning when you set off to your important business meeting in Paris or wherever you're going. And then of course I've got the head-up display, which shows the speed you're doing. I love head-up displays. I think they should be in all cars, especially modern electric cars, but they seem to not include them. You've got a few places to stow things in this cabin. 2 cup holders which come out a nicely damped way. Now unfortunately it does not pass the fat bottom bottle test, but what it does do is fit things like cans and takeaway coffee cups. The fat bottom bottle does fortunately fit in the side pocket, so we'll give it a pass there. You've got the glove box, which, as I always say, French cars, not great, because you've got a fuse box in there and that takes up half the space. Then you've got a little cubby hole here underneath the armrest in the centre. It's quite small, but it does have a 12-volt socket in there, which is good. And you've got a spacious boot. You know, okay, it's a saloon car, so you might struggle to get the largest items in through that gap, but there is a lot of room back there. With this being the 2.2 litre diesel, that is the equivalent of what would have been the 3 litre before they started downsizing everything. So it is powerful, it's got 200 horsepower, and even with this sort of torque converter gearbox, you still get 0 to 60 in 7.9 seconds. They're a pretty quick car, also economical with it being a diesel. You can expect to get 50 miles per gallon out of this car. Now there was a very clever hybrid diesel car, which you just don't see hybrid diesels, do you? And it never really caught on, which is interesting because what do you want from a hybrid? You want fuel economy. And what do you want from a diesel? You want fuel economy. So why not combine them both and get ultimate fuel economy? Because that car could get 70 to 80 miles per gallon in this massive, big, heavy saloon car. You know, this car's 17 to 1800 kilos of weight. Something that was on Peugeot's mind when they were designing this car, as well as making it the sort of quiet cruiser, they did make an effort to make this car handle well. Now, for a start, it's got hydraulic power steering, which is not on very many cars, is it now? Especially, you know, from that time onwards, it would all switched over to electric power steering, and they gave this car multi-link suspension. They wanted this car to drive nicely, and as a result, it does. It drives really quite surprisingly well. Nice direct steering. You can chuck it round a corner way quicker than you'd expect to be able to, and it genuinely gives you a sort of feeling of enjoyment as you do. The steering, it gives you a little bit of feedback. It's not totally dead. It's front wheel drive. It's not going to have that poise and balance of a BMW with 50-50 weight distribution, but it's going to beat things like the Passat. It's much better to drive than one of those. Now, my weak spot when it comes to car reviewing is that I have absolutely no idea about back seats. I'm just terrible at reviewing them. But fortunately, we do have someone who is good at that, and that is Backseat JJ. So, what do you think of the back seats of the 508, mate?
Guided by the search for perfectly balanced and streamlined contours, the style of 508 has a solidity that reflects the aspirations of elegance, robustness and high quality.
All right, press release lion, give it a rest. The back of the 508, it's pretty spacious. It's a big long car. Now my knees are in the back of this seat, but JJ does have it set to a particularly slouchy, lazy driving position today. Down here I've got actual like dual zone climate control for the back, which is a first for me. This car has got quad zone climate control. I've also got a 12-volt socket, and then of course these blinds here, which keeps the sun off me. A pretty decent sized armrest here with some cup holders in it. There's a ski hatch. The seats fold 60-40 split, which is good. You can fit long items in this car. Got door pockets, seat pockets. Doors don't open ridiculously wide, but you could definitely get your child seat in through there. This door handle is a little bit creaky actually. So yeah, that's the back of the 508. Back to you, pal. Cheers, mate. Thank you very much. When you're buying a used car, you do want to know about reliability, and I think there's always that thing in the back of your mind with French cars and Peugeots and so on, that maybe they're not going to be the most reliable car. On paper, these cars, they're about middle of the road for reliability. The 508 was scoring 75 out of 150 position on the surveys and so on. It's average, but anecdotally at least, David, who owns this car, he's done 30,000 miles in this car, 35,000 miles in this car in less than 2 years, and not a single thing has gone wrong. He's had a couple of electrical glitches, like the keyless entry only works on one side. It's livable with. You can still just unlock the car with a button on the key fob, and this car has done a lot of miles and it feels like it's been well put together. It feels solid. So the thing is, this car did get outsold by cars like the Mondeo and the Passat and the BMWs and so on. But I don't always see that as a bad thing personally, because it means it's rare and it means it's different. It means that you've got something that not everyone else has, and okay, some people might look down on the badge, but you shouldn't care about things like that. If you like a car, you like that car. That's what matters. This car cost its owner 5 or 6 grand a few years ago, you know. It's just like very good value for money. So is this car better than the VW Passat? Because let's face it, that really is the true rival for this car, I think. And the answer is no. But is this car worse than the VW Passat? The answer is also definitely no. This car is really quite impressive. I've enjoyed driving it, and I think as a petrol head, this would be my choice over the Passat any day of the week, because for a start, it drives well, it handles well, it's got a little bit more flair and character than the Passat. So why didn't they sell all that many of these cars? And I don't know. I think it's just badge snobbery. I think it's just a case of, in England, French cars are small cars. The bigger cars, they don't get the same attention that, you know, the German manufacturers do. And I think that is, in the case of this car at least, a shame, because this car is a nice car. Thank you very much to David for lending me this car, and to you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next video.